I want you to open your PSA right now. Pull up your ticket queue, all boards, every open ticket in the system. Now tell me, what's the oldest ticket in there? Not the oldest priority one, oldest anything. Go find it. 60 days? 90? 180? I've seen 7,000 days. 7,000. That's not a typo. That's a ticket that was opened before some of the people watching this video were old enough to drive. Still sitting in the system, still technically open, still technically someone's problem. That ticket is not a backlog item. That ticket is not a to-do. That ticket is a liability. It is technical debt, and it's silently, methodically, and completely avoidably destroying your business while you call it a backlog and move on with your day. That's what we're talking about today. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at your ticket queue the same way again. Technical debt is a term I borrowed from software development. In coding, technical debt is what happens when a developer team takes shortcuts, writes code that works right now but isn't built properly because they needed to ship fast. The code works, but the debt accumulates, and at some point, the interest on all those shortcuts exceeds the ability to build new things. They spend all their time servicing the debt instead of creating value. The product stalls. Sometimes the company doesn't survive it. I brought that term into IT service delivery because the parallel is exact. Every open ticket in your system that isn't moving, every ticket that's aging, sitting, accumulating, is technical debt. It represents value you promised to deliver and haven't. Work that needs to happen and isn't happening. Risk that is building quietly in the background of your operation while your team is busy with today's tickets and your clients are assuming everything is fine. But everything isn't freaking fine. And just like financial debt, just like the money you put on a credit card and don't pay down, technical debt compounds. Every day that ticket sits there, the cost goes up. Not just in technical time, when you eventually have to touch it again and relearn what was happening. The cost goes up in risk, in client trust, in the gap between what you promised and what you're delivering. And at some point, and I've watched this happen to MSPs who thought they were doing fine, the interest exceeds the principal. The debt is too large to service, and the business starts showing cracks that nobody can explain because nobody was measuring the debt. Technical debt, at some point, it all has to get paid down with interest. And the longer you wait, the more it costs. I come from a manufacturing background, and in manufacturing, there's a concept so fundamental that every plant manager, every operations director, every person who has ever run a production floor understands in their bones. Inventory sitting on the floor costs money. Not when it arrives, not when it ships, when it sits. Every day that raw material or work in progress inventory sits in your facility and not moving towards a customer, it's costing you storage cost, handling cost, carrying cost, and opportunity costs. It's tying up capital that can be doing something else. It's creating risk. Inventory gets damaged, gets lost, gets obsolete. And most critically, it's not generating revenue. It's the thing you promised to turn into value, sitting between you and the customer, going nowhere. Your open ticket queue is the inventory on the floor. Every single ticket in your system that isn't moving toward resolution is work in progress, sitting in your facility. It costs you something when it arrived. The client call, the ticket creation, the initial triage. It's costing you something every day it sits. Attention, refamiliarization time when you eventually touch it again, the risk that something has changed since it was opened, and it's generating exactly zero revenue while it sits there, going nowhere. But here's where the parallel gets dark. In manufacturing, inventory sitting on the floor is visible. You can see it. You can walk the floor and count it. You can look at a pile of unfinished products and feel the discomfort of what it represents. In your PSA, in your ticket queue, that inventory is invisible. You can't see it in the way you can see a pile of parts. You can scroll past it. You can sort by priority and pretend the old stuff isn't there. You can call it a backlog and never look at it directly until it blows up. And it will blow up. It always does. I want to talk about what actually happens when technical debt goes unmanaged long enough. Not theoretically, not as a general business principle, specifically in your system to your clients. That ticket that's 180 days old, the one about the server running at 85% disk utilization, was put in because someone noticed something. It wasn't urgent at the time. It got deprioritized. It got buried. It got scrolled past every morning for 6 months while newer, louder, more urgent things demanded attention. And now the drive is at 97% and the client server crashes on a Tuesday afternoon and they lose 3 hours of work and they call in a panic and you're looking at a ticket that was opened 6 months ago that nobody touched and you have to explain that. Or you don't explain it. You fix it and hope they don't ask. And they don't ask this time. But the next time something fails, they start wondering. And the time after that, they start shopping. And then there's the version that doesn't end with a difficult client conversation. There's the version that ends with the cyber incident. The firewall that needed an update, the endpoint protection that lapsed, the backup that hadn't been verified, all of it in tickets, all of it aging, all of it sitting in technical debt while the clock ran down. When the ransomware hit, and it hits, the cyber insurance company opens an investigation. They ask for your service records. They look at your ticket history. They find the ticket that was opened 8 months ago that flagged the vulnerability that enabled the attack. And then it's not just the client's problem, it's your problem. It's your errors and omissions insurance activated. It's your liability. It's potentially your business. The stupid part is that we had the ticket, we knew, and we let it sit. I'm not exaggerating this. I've seen it. I've worked with MSPs who were sued because the evidence of the problem was sitting in their own system, time-stamped, unresolved, while the clock ran out and the client's data walked out the door. Technical debt is not a backlog management problem. Technical debt is an existential risk. Let me ask you something directly, and I want you to actually sit with the question before you move on. If your technical debt, your aging tickets, your open items that haven't moved in weeks or months, if that looks like what I've been describing, old tickets scattered across your board, some of them approaching or past 100 days, some of them carrying hours upon hours of technical time with no resolution in sight, some of them flagging issues that you know damn well are still live problems for your clients. So tell me then, what the hell is it that you think you're managing? You're not managing a service operation, you're managing the appearance of one. And there is a very significant difference between those two things that your client will eventually discover, either in the ordinary course of business or in the worst possible moment when something fails and the audit trails of your inaction is sitting right there in your own system. I say this not to beat you up. I say this because most MSP owners I work with had no idea how bad the debt was until someone made it visible. Not because they're bad operators, because their debt was invisible. They were working hard, genuinely hard. And the queue keeps growing, and the oldest tickets keep aging, and nobody has a system for seeing it clearly enough to do something about it. That changes today, not because I'm going to shame you into it, because I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Here's the frame I want to leave you with before part 2 of this series, because it changes the way you look at this permanently. Every open ticket in your system represents one of 3 things. Either it represents the value you owe a client and haven't delivered, service you've been paid for or committed to that is sitting unresolved, or it represents a risk that is accumulating, a problem that exists in your client's environment that you know about and haven't resolved, and that's getting worse every day. Or it represents revenue you could be generating, billable work, project opportunity, upsell potential that is sitting in a ticket instead of in an opportunity or an invoice. In manufacturing, we call it work in progress inventory. In finance, we call it accounts receivable that hasn't been collected. In the service business, we call it backlog, and we shrug and move on. And that shrug is costing you money every day. In every ticket that sits there doing nothing except getting older and more dangerous and more expensive to eventually resolve. The question is not whether your technical debt is a problem. It is. The question is whether you can see it clearly enough to do something about it right now. In most MSP systems, that debt is invisible. It's buried in a queue, sorted by priority, filtered by status, managed by expectation, and never looked at as a complete picture of what you're actually carrying. In part 2, I'm going to show you the monster in the machine. I'm going to show you what your technical debt actually looks like when you plot every open ticket in your system on a single visualization. And I promise you, the first time you see your own board mapped this way, you'll feel it in a way that a simple ticket count never could. Because you can scroll past a number. You can't scroll past a picture. Technical debt is the #1 reason MSPs fail. Not the competition, not pricing pressure, not the economy, not even bad clients, though bad clients don't help. The slow, invisible, compounding, accumulating, and unresolved work that was never made visible enough to manage is what hollows out our service operation from the inside. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And right now, most of you can't see it. Part 2 changes that. Subscribe so you don't miss it. It drops next week, and if you think what I said today was uncomfortable, wait until you see what your own queue actually looks like through my goggles.